You know, for 2 whole centuries, the United States and Brazil had been major allies here in the Americas. It's a relationship built on everything from trade and defense to a really long shared history. But right now, that friendship is facing what might be its biggest test ever. So let's dive in and unpack the events that suggest this historic alliance might just be at a dangerous crossroads.
And it all really boils down to this number, 15. See, there's a memo making the rounds in Washington that lays out 15 specific points of friction. And these are incidents that are causing the U.S. to seriously reevaluate its relationship with Brazil, even starting to see it as a potential threat. We're not talking about a minor disagreement here. This is a pattern, and it signals a massive geopolitical shift is underway.
To really get why this is such a big deal, we got to look back. We have to understand just how deep these roots go. I mean, we're talking about a 200-year-old relationship that has, for the most part, been one of the most stable partnerships in the entire Western Hemisphere.
And this timeline really puts it in perspective. Think about this. Way back in 1822, the U.S. was the very first country in the world to recognize Brazil's independence. That's a huge deal diplomatically. And it kicked off centuries of partnership in defense, science, you name it, making the U.S. one of Brazil's most vital trading partners, even today. And that solid foundation of friendship is exactly what makes all this new tension so alarming.
So what on earth changed? Well, let's get into the first major source of all this friction. It's Brazil's very deliberate, very public effort to get closer to nations that the United States considers its biggest adversaries. And this is where the story starts to get really, really complicated.
And you can really see the pattern right here. It's not just one thing. It's allowing Iranian warships to dock in Rio even after direct U.S. warnings. It's rolling out the red carpet for Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. It's sending high-level reps to Russian economic forums while the war in Ukraine is still raging. And it's rebuilding strong diplomatic and economic bridges with Cuba. From Washington's point of view, this looks like a consistent choice to side with its biggest rivals.
And you better believe the reaction in the U.S. has been loud. When those Iranian warships docked, Republican Senator Ted Cruz called it, quote, a direct threat to the safety and security of Americans. I mean, when you start hearing that kind of language, it just raises the stakes to a whole new level. It shows you just how seriously this is being taken. But it's not just about who Brazil is making friends with. It's a direct challenge to the entire U.S.-led global system. You've got calls for a new global governance, often made right alongside China. There's constant criticism of the US dollar's dominance and even talk of creating a new BRICS currency to get around it. So the bottom line is, this isn't just about alliances. It's about questioning the fundamental economic and political rules of the game.
And the story doesn't stop there, because this conflict isn't just happening on the world stage. The second big area of tension is all about Brazil's domestic policies, which are creating some serious international ripple effects, especially when it comes to money and the internet.
And this is a perfect example of where they're butting heads. The U.S. is saying, hey, label these powerful criminal gangs like the PCC as terrorist groups. Doing that would unlock a whole toolkit of tough international sanctions. But Brazil is pushing back hard, saying, whoa, not so fast. They argue that a label like that would actually make their own security operations on the ground way more complicated. It's a fundamental disagreement on a really critical issue.
Then you've got the economic friction. It starts with this. Brazil keeps importing huge amounts of fertilizer and diesel from Russia, arguing it's a matter of national security for their farms and their economy. But in Washington, that's seen as directly weakening the international sanctions against Moscow. So what happens next? U.S. lawmakers start talking openly about hitting back with their own measures, creating this really dangerous tit-for-tat cycle.
The digital world has become another battleground. Brazilian courts have been ordering social media content and profiles to be blocked. From Washington's perspective, that's a potential threat to free expression and, of course, to the business of American tech giants. And then, to top it all off, there's growing alarm in the U.S. that Brazil is looking to China as a model for how to regulate the internet. You can see how that would create a major clash of values.
So, when you put all these pieces together, from global alliances to domestic policy clashes, we end up here at a very uncertain future. This 200-year-old relationship is without a doubt at a critical turning point.
There's actually a term for what we're seeing. It's called assertive diplomacy. And this is really the new reality of Brazil's foreign policy. It's a strategic choice to act on its own, to prioritize what it sees as its national interests, even if that means ticking off a powerful traditional ally like the United States. And that really brings us to the main takeaway here. These 15 points of friction,
They're not just a series of random, unrelated squabbles. When you look at them all together, they paint a pretty clear picture of a deliberate, strategic pivot by Brazil away from the U.S. orbit. This feels like a conscious uncoupling in progress.
This new reality leaves us with some really serious unanswered questions, and each one gets a little more intense. So the first and most immediate one is this. Could all these diplomatic clashes actually harden into real, painful economic sanctions against Brazil?
And if that happens, then what? Is a formal break in relations, something that would have sounded completely crazy just a few years ago, actually on the table now for these two giants of the Americas?
Which, of course, leads to the most chilling question some analysts are starting to ask. If these trends keep going, if the tension keeps escalating, could it eventually create a risk, however remote it might seem now, of an actual military confrontation?
Honestly, the answers are completely unknown. With potential leadership changes on the horizon for both countries, the future of this 200-year-old friendship is really just hanging in the balance. The only thing we know for sure is that the entire world is watching to see who is going to make the next move.